going to see a short film which shows some things you must do in wartime and some things you must not do. Actually, the film was taken during those last fateful days in August when it became plain that Hitler intended war. And now war has come. The things appearing in the film as possibilities are now facts. And the film intended as a warning for the future becomes advice for the present. Advice to be heard and taken, here and now.
Today, we're going to be talking about how the Blitz hit the home front and how it affected the civilians inhabiting the targeted major industrial cities, in particular London.
The Blitz, coming from the German word Blitzkrieg, meaning lightning war, was a bombing campaign carried out by the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, during the Second World War.
Let's see how the Brits coped with the Blitz.
The Blitz hit London between September the 7th, 1940 to May the 10th, 1941 during the Second World War, in which time it is estimated that over 40,000 civilians were killed, around 60% of London's buildings destroyed, and countless people injured.
It's important to remember that this wasn't the first time that London was bombed. During the First World War, London was subjected to a bombing campaign by Germany, using Zeppelin airships in 1915, and then airplanes from 1917.
The bombings of the First World War accounted for nearly £1.5 million worth of damage.
Yet this pales in comparison to the almost £20 million worth of damage inflicted on Britain at the end of 1941.
The first bombings in September 1940 were targeted at East London, particularly at the docks for their strategic value.
But the Blitz was not just designed to destroy industrial and military locations. It was also aimed at harming London's morale. Civilians like my granddad were very much under attack during these raids, with millions losing their homes and their lives. By the end of the war, my granddad's house was the only one left standing on his street.
First stop, Post Office, now known as St Paul's. Morale was also tied to iconic London buildings, most famously St Paul's Cathedral. A total of 28 bombs were targeted at St Paul's, and yet it almost miraculously survived.
The government was eager to help it survive because of the morale and propaganda value of the building, and a plan was put in place to protect it from the damage. When St Paul's was eventually hit, a group of volunteers called St Paul's Watch worked hard to ensure that it was saved.
Rising above the bombed London skyline, we see St Paul's Cathedral shrouded in smoke during the Blitz. This photograph was taken from the roof of the Daily Mail offices in Fleet Street.
Iconic photographs such as this one were taken and used in propaganda campaigns, helping to maintain Britain's morale.
Evacuation began in anticipation of the bombing of London on the 1st of September 1939. The government evacuated children and pregnant women to areas considered safe in the countryside in fear of German bombing.
Jeff Blythe, aged 12, was evacuated from Rotherhithe to Kent at the beginning of the war. Here Jeff remembers watching the vibrant skyline during the start of the Blitz.
And during the Blitz, we could see the sky was orange. That black line of the hills, no lights below, all black out. See the orange, and the sky was flickering. And the flickering was you could see the reflection of the flames in London. So London was burning, and that is something I shall never forget as long as I live.
Gas masks were issued from the beginning of the war, and to make them less scary for younger children, special Mickey Mouse versions were issued. Manufactured in bright colours, it was intended to be more attractive and less sinister than the adult versions. You have now arrived at Elephant and Castle.
For the civilians remaining in London, their only choice once the Blitz began was to take shelter. The iconic Anderson shelter was issued to all those on low incomes free of charge, with those who had higher incomes being charged slightly more.
For those who did not want to shelter in an Anderson shelter, the underground tube stations became popular shelters, despite the use of them being banned at the beginning of the war.
Next stop, Bethnal Green.
Eventually, the government realised that Londoners were using the tube stations anyway, and they came into official use. However, the tube stations were not always the best option, as seen in Bethnal Green tube station tragedy of March 1943, in which upon hearing an explosion, a stampede to enter the station caused the deaths of 173 people.
Later in the war, in what became known as the Second Blitz, from 1944 to 1945, Hitler's V1 and V2 rockets came into use.
Later on, in 1944, we got the flying bombs, the doodlebugs, as the Americans used to call them. And some say the beauty of them, they did a lot of damage, but you could hear them coming. They're quite a noise. You could see them sometimes, because flames were coming out at the tail end, you see. But once that engine stopped, the silence, you would immediately drop. And so you took cover wherever you were. Many times I've sort of thrown myself against a brick wall. They trapped on the pavement while the thing was going down.
The V1 rocket lost its effect as 50% of the 8,000 to 9,000 rockets sent to London were shot down. Where the V1 was able to be seen by civilians and anti-aircraft units alike, the V2 was much harder to see and as such caused far more damage, in total injuring or killing 115,000 people.
The next station is Bank.
Somewhat of a Blitz spirit was maintained by the people of London during the bombings. Patriotism and a sense of community made Londoners band together and helped them through not only the Blitz, but the war itself and the other troubles it raised.
The government used propaganda to boost morale, such as this Dig for Victory banner on display on the Royal Exchange.
There were huge amounts of propaganda on display, through the mediums of posters, films and radio programmes, all focusing on different aspects of the war, such as campaigns like Dig for Victory and Keep Mum.
Next stop, Green Park, a light here for Buckingham Palace.
Morale was also maintained by the visibility of the royal family, who made frequent visits to military bases and to charity events.
The royal family helped to fuel patriotism by being the ultimate symbol of British society, and they remained in London throughout the Blitz, even after Buckingham Palace was hit during a direct raid, supporting the notion that Londoners must carry on.
It took London a long time to recover from the Blitz. A major project to bring London back to its feet was the installation of prefabs, which were small houses that could quickly be built from pieces that had been made in factories.
This strategy was employed because there was a desperate and immediate need for housing, and prefabs were a cheaper, faster and easier alternative than brick houses.
Plans were made by local councils after the Second World War for an estate of prefab housing, necessary to house those whose homes were destroyed during the Blitz.
Plans were also made to create new homes, this time further from the centre, to accommodate more people and decentralise London.
This train terminates at Angel. All change.
This iconic poster, Your Britain, Fight for It Now, was created by Abram Games. On the left, a brick wall bears the image of a modern building complex, the Finsbury Health Centre, which was a prefab building.
Behind and to the right of the image is the ruined shell of a house, the word disease written on the far wall, and a sickly-looking child playing with a toy boat in a puddle on the ground.
The Finsbury Health Centre was built by the local council as a response to the urgent needs of the population. The building was designed to deliver accessible healthcare and education.
Post-war reconstruction and social changes, such as the introduction of the National Health Service and education reform, changed the life of Londoners for the better.
The impact of the Blitz on London can still be felt today, in the traces of bomb damage to old buildings, to the reconstructed streets and changed skyline.
This film was produced by Imperial War Museum Youth Advisers.
Lily,
Isabel,
Catherine,
Amber,
And Fabienne.
I know.
yes,
and they were terrible.
We had this lady called Moya, and she was talking about the chickens. She was like, "No chickens."
I have a phobia of chickens.